The unforgiving midday sun beat down on the dry earth of the deep south in the year 1858. The Oakwood Plantation, a vast empire built on the wealth of cotton and the sweat of hundreds of enslaved men and women, stretched as far as the eye could see. Its owner, the ruthless millionaire planter Arthur Sterling, was a man feared and respected throughout the state. Known for his cold demeanor and rigid methods, Arthur had built his fortune with an iron fist, tolerating no mistakes, let alone rebellion. But fate, with its peculiar irony, was about to place in his path something, or rather, someone, that would challenge all his convictions and shake the foundations of his meticulously controlled world. On that sweltering day, dust rose in swirls in the main courtyard of the plantation, announcing the arrival of a new group of slaves purchased at the auction block in New Orleans. Arthur watched the scene from the veranda of his grand white-columned mansion, his eyes narrowed beneath the brim of his wide hat. The overseer, a brutal man named Thomas, pushed the newcomers violently, organizing them into a line for the master's inspection. Among the exhausted faces, marked by pain and despair, one in particular caught Arthur's attention. It was not a face of submission, but of defiance. It belonged to a young woman of deep mahogany skin and eyes that flashed like hot coals. She was chained, but she held her head high, her chin jutting forward in a posture of pride that contrasted sharply with her captive condition. Her name, he would soon discover, was Sarah. Sarah's reputation preceded her. The slave trader had warned Thomas about her indomitable temper. She had already passed through 3 different masters, and all had sold her after frustrated attempts to break her spirit. "She's a wildcat, Mr. Sterling," Thomas said, spitting on the ground as he pointed to the young woman. "She's no good for housework, and in the field she only causes trouble. The trader sold her for a bargain just to get rid of the burden." Arthur descended the steps of the veranda, his boots echoing in the tense silence of the courtyard. He stopped in front of Sarah, analyzing her with an icy stare. She held his gaze, unblinking, a spark of hatred shining in her dark pupils. "A wildcat, you say?" Arthur murmured, his voice low but heavy with authority. "We shall see if she cannot be tamed." He ordered her taken to the slave quarters and assigned to the hardest labor in the cotton fields under Thomas's constant watch. What Arthur did not know, and what the overseer ignored, was that Sarah's rebellion was not a mere whim, but the manifestation of a spirit forged in struggle and loss, a flame that refused to be extinguished by the cruelty of slavery. And so the clash between the millionaire planter and the most rebellious slave began, a confrontation that would forever change the history of the Oakwood Plantation. In the first few days, Sarah followed Thomas's orders, but with a calculated slowness, a silent defiance that infuriated the overseer. She showed no weakness, she did not cry, she did not beg for mercy, even when the whip cracked in the air as a constant threat. Her resistance inspired the other captives, whispers of hope spreading through the quarters during the sleepless nights. Arthur, from his veranda, observed the dynamic with growing interest. He saw in Sarah something he saw in no other slave, a sharp intelligence, an unbreakable willpower, a spark of humanity that refused to be reduced to mere merchandise. The planter's curiosity turned into obsession. He began finding excuses to ride down to the cotton fields, watching her from afar, fascinated by her resilience. One afternoon, an incident changed the course of events. One of the older slaves, exhausted by the heat and the exertion, collapsed under the blazing sun. Thomas, enraged, raised his whip to punish him. Before the blow could land, Sarah stepped in, taking the lash across her own back. The sharp crack of leather tearing flesh echoed across the field, followed by a deathly silence. Sarah did not scream. She only looked at Thomas with a hatred so deep that the overseer stepped back, hesitant. Arthur, who was watching the scene from his horse, felt a tightness in his chest, an unfamiliar emotion that disturbed him profoundly. He ordered Thomas to stop immediately and demanded that Sarah be taken to the main house to have her wounds treated. The overseer obeyed, stunned, unable to comprehend his master's actions. In the mansion, Sarah was handed over to the care of Martha, the old enslaved housekeeper. While Martha cleaned the wounds with herbs and salves, Arthur entered the room, his expression unreadable. "Why did you do that?" he asked, his voice rough. "You could have been killed." Sarah looked at him, the pain evident in her eyes, but her voice steady. "Because his life is worth as much as mine, sir. And because cruelty will not make me bow my head." The direct answer, devoid of fear, disarmed Arthur. He was accustomed to absolute submission, to reverential terror. Sarah's courage intrigued and challenged him in a way he could not understand. From that day on, something changed in the dynamic between them. Arthur ordered Sarah transferred to domestic work under Martha's supervision. The decision caused murmurs of discontent among the overseers and envy among the house servants, but no one dared question the millionaire planter's orders. Sarah, however, did not view the change as a privilege, but as a new form of prison. She refused to act like a docile servant, maintaining her proud posture and defiant gaze. The mansion, with its heavy mahogany furniture and crystal chandeliers, became the stage for a subtle game of power and resistance. Arthur tried to tame Sarah with harsh words and rigorous demands, but she responded with silence and veiled contempt. She performed her duties efficiently, but without the expected submission. Her presence in the house disturbed Arthur, awakening conflicting feelings within him: admiration for her strength, anger at her rebellion, and an unconfessed desire to unravel the mysteries hidden behind her flashing eyes. One night, unable to sleep, Arthur went down to his study. To his surprise, he found Sarah there, dusting the heavy wooden desk. She stopped when she saw him, but she did not lower her head. "What are you doing here at this hour?" he asked, his voice harsh. "Fulfilling my duties, sir," she replied, her tone neutral, but her eyes defiant. Arthur approached, his breathing heavy. "You challenge me with every look, with every gesture, Sarah. What do you want? What do you hope to achieve with this useless rebellion?" Sarah held his gaze, her voice low but thick with emotion. "I want nothing from you, sir. Only my freedom. And that, I know you will never give me." Her words hit Arthur like a physical blow. The raw truth, spoken without hesitation, exposed the hypocrisy of his existence, the brutality upon which his fortune had been built. For the first time in his life, the ruthless millionaire planter felt the weight of guilt, the shame of being the tormentor of a woman so strong and courageous. But change does not happen overnight. Arthur, a prisoner of his own convictions and the system that sustained him, fought against the feelings Sarah awakened in him. He tried to justify his actions, convincing himself that she was just a rebellious slave who needed to be broken. Yet with each passing day, Sarah's presence became more indispensable, her voice more necessary, her gaze more unsettling. He began calling her to the study under flimsy pretexts, just to hear her speak, to debate with her, to test the limits of her intelligence and patience. Sarah, in turn, sensed the planter's vulnerability. She began using their conversations to plant seeds of doubt in Arthur's mind, questioning the morality of slavery, the justice of a system that treated human beings as property. She spoke of her family, of her dreams and hopes, humanizing the figure of the slave in the eyes of the master. And Arthur, fascinated and tormented, listened. The tension between them reached its peak during a grand ball at the plantation, an event that gathered the elite of the southern aristocracy. Arthur, elegant in his formal attire, greeted the guests with his usual politeness, but his eyes constantly searched for Sarah, who was serving drinks with her usual proud bearing. Her presence, contrasting with the frivolity of the party, both bothered and attracted him. During the evening, one of the guests, an arrogant and cruel planter, known for his mistreatment of slaves, made a derogatory comment about Sarah, suggesting that Arthur sell her to him. Fury took hold of Arthur. Without thinking of the consequences, he defended Sarah vehemently, humiliating the guest in front of everyone. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur realized what he had done, the line he had crossed. He had publicly defended a slave, challenging the social conventions and the hypocritical morality of his class. Sarah, who had witnessed everything from afar, felt a mix of surprise and hope. Arthur's attitude revealed a crack in the armor of the ruthless planter, a spark of compassion she had not expected to find. That night, after the party, Arthur called Sarah to his study. He was agitated, his eyes shining with an unfamiliar intensity. "You drive me mad, Sarah," he confessed, his voice breaking. "You challenge everything I believe in, everything I am. And yet I cannot stop thinking about you." Sarah looked at him, her expression softening, but her voice firm. "You are not mad, sir. You are only beginning to see the truth you have always tried to ignore." Arthur stepped closer, his breathing ragged, and in an irresistible impulse he kissed her. It was a desperate kiss, loaded with desire, guilt, and repressed passion. Sarah did not resist, but neither did she surrender. She gently pushed him away, her eyes filling with tears. "I will not be your mistress, sir. I will not be just another piece of your property, to be used and discarded at your whim." Sarah's words echoed in Arthur's mind like a sentence. He realized that the love he felt for her was incompatible with her condition as a slave. If he truly loved her, he would have to free her. But freeing her meant defying society, facing the wrath of his peers, risking his fortune and his reputation. The millionaire planter, the man who had never hesitated in the face of a challenge, found himself facing the most difficult decision of his life. In the days that followed, Arthur plunged into a deep existential crisis. He isolated himself in the mansion, refusing to see anyone, tormented by doubt and fear. Sarah, sensing the planter's turmoil, kept her distance, waiting for the outcome of that internal battle. She knew the decision rested with him, and that the result would define not only her fate but his as well. The answer came unexpectedly. A group of abolitionists operating the Underground Railroad in the region contacted Sarah, offering her a chance to escape. She hesitated. Escape meant freedom, but it also meant leaving Arthur behind, abandoning the man who, despite everything, had awakened conflicting feelings in her. However, the promise of freedom spoke louder. Sarah accepted the offer, planning her escape for the following night. But the plan was discovered by Thomas, the ruthless overseer, who saw Sarah's escape as the perfect opportunity to take revenge on the slave who had defied him. He captured her before she could slip away, dragging her back to the quarters under the threat of the whip. When Arthur learned of what had happened, fury blinded him. He ran to the slave quarters, finding Sarah chained, her face marked by fear and exhaustion. Thomas, with a cruel smile on his lips, was preparing to punish her. "Stop!" Arthur shouted, his voice thundering across the yard. He advanced on the overseer, snatching the whip from his hands and throwing it far away. "If you touch her, I will kill you," Arthur threatened, his eyes flashing with hatred. Thomas backed away, terrified by his master's rage. Arthur ordered Sarah released and taken back to the mansion. The planter's actions made it clear to everyone that the relationship between him and the slave had crossed the boundaries of subordination. He had defied the overseer, the authority that maintained order on the plantation, to protect Sarah. In the mansion, Arthur tended to Sarah's wounds with his own hands, his expression heavy with pain and remorse. "I almost lost you," he whispered, his voice choked. "I cannot live without you, Sarah. I love you." Sarah looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "If you love me, free me, Arthur. Free me from this life of servitude, from this constant humiliation. Give me the chance to live as a free human being." Her words pierced Arthur's soul, breaking down the last barriers of his resistance. He understood that the true test of his love was not to protect her as valuable property, but to set her free, even if it meant losing her. The next day, Arthur gathered all the slaves of the plantation in the main courtyard. The silence was absolute, the tension palpable. He stepped onto the veranda of the mansion, his expression solemn, and announced his decision. "As of today, all the workers of the Oakwood plantation are free," he declared, his voice firm and resonant. "You are no longer anyone's property. You are free men and women, masters of your own destinies." The crowd erupted in shouts of joy and weeping, a wave of emotion that swept across the plantation. Arthur, the millionaire planter, the feared and ruthless man, had become the liberator of hundreds of souls. Sarah, in the midst of the crowd, looked at Arthur with gratitude and admiration. She had achieved the impossible. She had tamed the millionaire planter, not with brute force, but with the strength of her spirit, with the courage of her rebellion. Arthur descended from the veranda and walked toward Sarah, extending his hand to her. "You are free, Sarah. Free to go wherever you want, to be whoever you want." Sarah took his hand, a smile lighting up her face. "I choose to stay, Arthur. I choose to stay with you." The story of Arthur and Sarah became a legend in the region, a symbol of hope and resistance. The millionaire planter who bought the most rebellious slave discovered that in the end, it was she who freed him from the chains of his own ignorance and cruelty. Together, they transformed the Oakwood plantation into a haven for former slaves, a place where freedom and justice prevailed over oppression and prejudice. And so the secret that Sarah kept, the unbreakable strength of her spirit, changed everything, not only Arthur's life, but the history of all those who crossed their path. The slaves' rebellion had transformed into the seed of freedom, a seed that blossomed and bore fruit, proving that love and courage are stronger than any chain. But the journey of Arthur and Sarah was far from over. The decision to free the workers generated a wave of outrage among the neighboring planters, who saw Arthur's actions as a direct threat to their own interests and way of life. The Oakwood plantation became the target of attacks and sabotage, a desperate attempt to silence the voice of freedom in the heart of the South. Arthur, however, was not intimidated. He used his vast fortune and influence to protect his land and his newly freed workers, facing the fury of the elite with the same determination with which he had built his empire. Sarah, by his side, became his chief advisor and ally, her intelligence and intuition guiding the planter's steps in the most difficult moments. The struggle for survival united Arthur and Sarah in a profound and unbreakable way. They faced adversity together, overcoming obstacles with courage and resilience. The Oakwood plantation prospered under the new order, proving that free, paid labor was more efficient and productive than slavery. The prosperity of the plantation attracted the attention of abolitionists and intellectuals from the North, who saw in Arthur's experiment a model to be followed. Arthur became an influential voice in the abolitionist movement, using his story to raise awareness about the cruelty and injustice of the system. Sarah, for her part, dedicated herself to the education and empowerment of her people, founding a school on the plantation and fighting for the rights of African American women. The love story between the millionaire planter and the rebellious slave transcended the barriers of prejudice and discrimination, becoming a beacon of hope in the midst of darkness. They proved that true love knows no boundaries, that courage can change the world, and that freedom is an inalienable right of all human beings. And as the sun set over the Oakwood plantation, painting the sky with vibrant colors, Arthur and Sarah walked hand in hand through the cotton fields, their hearts full of peace and their souls free from the chains of the past. Sarah's rebellion had changed Arthur's destiny, and Arthur's love had changed Sarah's destiny. Together, they had written a new history, a story of love, courage, and freedom, a story that would echo through eternity, inspiring generations to fight for a more just and equal world. The expansion of the Oakwood plantation as a sanctuary of freedom brought new and complex challenges for Arthur and Sarah. The news that a millionaire planter had emancipated his entire workforce and hired them as wage laborers spread like wildfire across the southern states. Dozens and soon hundreds of runaway slaves from neighboring plantations began arriving at the borders of Oakwood, seeking asylum and a chance to start anew. The estate, previously focused exclusively on the monoculture of cotton, had to reinvent itself to sustain this growing population. Sarah, with her pragmatic vision and deep understanding of her people's needs, proposed the diversification of crops. Where there had only been cotton, vast fields of corn, wheat, vegetables, and livestock appeared, ensuring food security for everyone. The external pressure, however, intensified daily. The powerful planters of the region, led by the ruthless Colonel Beauregard, formed a secret alliance to destroy the utopia Arthur had built. They viewed Oakwood not merely as a moral insult to their traditions, but as a direct threat to the Southern economy. If Arthur's free labor model succeeded, it would only be a matter of time before their own slaves rebelled or fled. The initial economic boycott soon escalated into more aggressive tactics. Armed patrols of slave catchers began roaming the edges of the plantation, attempting to capture fugitives seeking refuge. Mysterious fires broke out on the borders of Arthur's fields, destroying valuable portions of the harvest. Arthur, aware of the imminent danger, did not back down. He utilized his immense wealth to arm and train a private militia, composed of the freed workers themselves, to defend their land. The millionaire planter, once a calculating businessman, transformed into an improvised military leader determined to protect the sanctuary he had built with Sarah. The tension culminated on a moonless night when a heavily armed group, financed by Colonel Beauregard, attempted to invade the plantation under the cover of darkness. Their objective was clear: capture Sarah, whom they considered the primary instigator of Arthur's rebellion, and burn the main house to the ground. But they underestimated the resolve of the people of Oakwood. Alerted by the guard dogs, the defenders of the plantation, led by Arthur and strategically organized by Sarah, repelled the attack. The battle was brief but fierce, marked by the sound of gunfire echoing through the valley and the glare of torches illuminating the night. Arthur's victory solidified Oakwood's position as an impenetrable fortress. The news of the failed attack demoralized the neighboring planters and emboldened the abolitionist movement, who began to view Arthur and Sarah as heroes of the cause. In the years that followed, the plantation thrived in unprecedented ways. The quality of the crops produced by motivated free workers far surpassed that of neighboring estates, commanding premium prices in northern and European markets. Arthur's wealth grew, but this time it was not stained with blood. He used his resources to fund abolitionist newspapers, support anti-slavery politicians, and purchase the freedom of individuals trapped in situations of extreme cruelty. Sarah, meanwhile, became a respected and influential figure, not only on the plantation, but throughout the abolitionist network. She traveled secretly to assist in organizing underground railroad routes, becoming a living legend among those seeking freedom. The love between Arthur and Sarah, forged in the fire of adversity, matured and deepened. They were not just lovers, but partners in a mission far greater than themselves. The rebellious slave and the ruthless planter had transformed into the architects of a new era, proving that humanity and justice could triumph over greed and cruelty. Their story, told and retold around campfires and in northern drawing rooms, became a powerful symbol that love, when allied with courage, possesses the power to break the strongest chains and rewrite the destiny of a nation. Old age came to Arthur and Sarah not with the weight of regret, but with the serenity of those who had fulfilled their purpose. The Oakwood plantation, now a prosperous and self-sufficient town, continued to be a beacon of hope. When the Civil War finally ended, and the Emancipation Proclamation became the law of the land, the celebration at Oakwood lasted for days. For Arthur and Sarah, the law was merely the official confirmation of a reality they had built with their own hands decades earlier. They looked back at the long and arduous path they had traveled and knew that every sacrifice, every battle had been worth it. The wildcat had tamed the millionaire planter, and together they had helped tame the cruelty of a nation. The consolidation of freedom at Oakwood required more than just physical courage. It demanded a profound social and cultural transformation. Sarah knew that true emancipation did not end with the breaking of chains, but began with the reconstruction of dignity and identity. She implemented an innovative educational system on the plantation, where not only reading and writing were taught, but also the history and traditions of their African ancestors, which had been suppressed for so long. The plantation school became a center of excellence, attracting teachers and intellectuals interested in Sarah's revolutionary pedagogical model. Arthur, for his part, dedicated himself to restructuring the plantation's economy to ensure long-term sustainability. He introduced new agricultural techniques, imported modern machinery, and established direct commercial partnerships with northern merchants, eliminating the middlemen who frequently exploited local producers. Oakwood became a model of efficiency and innovation, definitively proving that free labor was economically superior to slavery. Arthur's financial success allowed him to invest in infrastructure, building comfortable homes, a hospital, and even a small theater for the workers. The relationship between Arthur and the workers also underwent a profound metamorphosis. The reverential fear of the past was replaced by mutual respect and genuine collaboration. Arthur was frequently seen working side by side with the men in the fields, sharing their meals and listening to their concerns. He instituted a workers' council, allowing them to have an active voice in the decisions that affected the community. This democratic and participatory approach strengthened the bonds of solidarity and belonging, creating a cohesive and resilient community. Sarah, always attentive to the emotional and spiritual needs of her people, promoted the revitalization of ancestral cultural practices. The music, once forbidden, now resonated freely during festive nights, celebrating heritage and resistance. The dances, songs, and rituals became vital expressions of a recovered identity, a powerful antidote against the dehumanization imposed by slavery. The plantation became a space of healing and celebration, where the scars of the past began to close. The impact of Oakwood extended far beyond its borders. The community became a safe haven for thinkers, artists, and activists who found there an environment conducive to debate and creation. The plantation hosted gatherings and conferences where strategies for civil rights and social reform were discussed and planned. Arthur and Sarah became central figures in the movement for equality, using their influence and resources to support the cause across the country. They funded awareness campaigns, published manifestos, and pressured politicians to adopt more just policies. The trajectory of Arthur and Sarah was not without personal sacrifices. They faced social ostracism, death threats, and the constant pressure of a society fiercely resisting change. However, the love that united them and their conviction in the justice of their cause gave them the strength to persevere. They built a legacy that transcended their own lives, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the struggle for freedom in America. Oakwood became an enduring symbol that utopia is possible, as long as there is courage to dream and determination to act. The story of the most rebellious slave and the millionaire planter is a testament to the human capacity for transformation and redemption. It is a narrative that challenges simplistic views and invites us to reflect on the complexity of human relations and the power of love as a driving force for social change. Sarah not only conquered her own freedom, but catalyzed the liberation of hundreds of others, demonstrating that individual resistance can have a profound collective impact. Arthur, in turn, showed that it is possible to break with the privileges and conventions of one's class to embrace a greater and more just cause. The legacy of Arthur and Sarah continues to inspire generations of activists and human rights defenders. Their story reminds us that the struggle for equality and justice is a continuous process, and that every individual has the power to make a difference. The Oakwood Plantation, once a symbol of oppression, was transformed into a monument to resilience and hope, a place where the seed of freedom was planted and cultivated with love and dedication. And as long as there is injustice and inequality in the world, the story of Arthur and Sarah will continue to resonate, a call to action and a reminder that a better world is possible. What state or country are you watching this story from? I want to know how far the echoes of our past are reaching. What would you do if you were in Arthur's position, risking all your fortune and reputation for love and justice? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read every single one. Do you agree with Sarah's decision to forgive Arthur and build a new life by his side? Comment yes or no below and tell me why. The journey of Arthur and Sarah at Oakwood also teaches us about the importance of memory and truth in building a more just society. They did not try to erase the dark past of the plantation, but confronted it head-on, using it as a constant reminder of the need for vigilance and commitment to freedom. They preserved the old slave quarters not as a place of suffering but as a memorial, a space for reflection and learning about the atrocities of the past. This courageous and honest approach to history helped heal the community's wounds and forge a collective identity based on resistance and overcoming. Sarah's vision for Oakwood went beyond physical and economic emancipation. She sought the intellectual and spiritual emancipation of her people. She believed that true freedom could only be achieved through knowledge and a critical understanding of the world. Therefore, education was always a central priority in her community project. The plantation school not only taught basic skills, but also promoted critical thinking, creativity, and the appreciation of African American culture. Sarah understood that education was the most powerful weapon against oppression and the key to building a more egalitarian future. Arthur, inspired by Sarah's vision, became a fervent advocate for public education. He used his political influence to pressure the government to invest in schools and guarantee access to education for all, regardless of their social or racial background. He believed that education was the foundation of a prosperous and democratic nation, and that ignorance was the root of many of the evils that afflicted the country. The partnership between Arthur and Sarah in promoting education left a lasting legacy, inspiring similar initiatives in other parts of the South. The love story between Arthur and Sarah also challenged the social norms and racial prejudices of their time. They proved that true love recognizes no boundaries of race, class, or social condition. Their union was an act of rebellion against a system that sought to dehumanize and separate people based on arbitrary characteristics. They built a relationship based on mutual respect, admiration, and equality, a model of partnership that inspired many others to question social conventions and seek more authentic and egalitarian relationships. The Oakwood Plantation, under the leadership of Arthur and Sarah, became a microcosm of the America they dreamed of building. A country where diversity was celebrated, where social justice was a reality, and where everyone had the opportunity to reach their full potential. They demonstrated that building a more just and egalitarian society was not an unattainable utopia, but a concrete goal that required commitment, hard work, and solidarity. Their story is an invitation to hope and action, a reminder that change is possible and that each of us has a role to play in building a better world. The legacy of Arthur and Sarah continues to resonate in contemporary struggles for social justice and racial equality. Their story inspires us to continue fighting against all forms of oppression and discrimination, to defend human rights, and to build a more inclusive and democratic society. They remind us that freedom is not a gift, but a conquest, and that constant vigilance is necessary to protect it. The story of the most rebellious slave and the millionaire planter is a testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit and the transformative power of love and solidarity. The narrative of Arthur and Sarah also invites us to reflect on the role of allies in the fight against oppression. Arthur, a white, rich, and privileged man, used his position of power to dismantle the system that benefited him and to support the struggle for freedom of Sarah and her people. He demonstrated that true solidarity requires more than just words of support. It requires concrete action, personal sacrifice, and the willingness to give up privileges in the name of justice. The partnership between Arthur and Sarah is a powerful example of how an alliance between different social groups can be a catalytic force for social change. The history of Oakwood also highlights the importance of economic autonomy in consolidating freedom. Sarah and Arthur understood that political and legal emancipation would be fragile without economic independence. Therefore, they invested in crop diversification, technological innovation, and the creation of workers' cooperatives. They built a sustainable and equitable economic model, which guaranteed the community's prosperity and protected it from the pressures and boycotts of neighboring planters. The experience of Oakwood demonstrates that social justice and economic development are not mutually exclusive goals, but interdependent ones. The memory of Arthur and Sarah is kept alive through generations, not only in history books, but in the practices and traditions of the communities. Their story is told and retold in churches, schools, and homes, inspiring young people to take pride in their heritage and to fight for their rights. They became symbols of resistance, courage, and hope, mythical figures who embody the ideals of freedom and equality. Their story is a reminder that the fight against oppression is long and arduous, but that final victory is possible for those who persevere. The trajectory of Arthur and Sarah at Oakwood is an epic of love, courage, and transformation. It is the story of how two individuals coming from opposite worlds united to challenge an unjust system and build a new reality based on freedom and human dignity. Their legacy is a beacon that illuminates the path to a more just and egalitarian future, a testament to the power of love to heal the wounds of the past and forge a better tomorrow. And as long as their story is remembered, the flame of hope will continue to burn, inspiring new generations to dream of a world where everyone is truly free. The Oakwood Plantation, today a museum and cultural center, receives thousands of visitors every year, who come to learn the story of the millionaire planter and the rebellious slave. The main house, restored to its original glory, houses exhibitions on the history of the region, social struggles, and African American culture. The old slave quarters, preserved as a memorial, are a space for reflection and tribute to those who suffered under the yoke of slavery. The school founded by Sarah continues to operate, offering quality education to the children of the region and keeping alive the commitment of its founders to intellectual emancipation. The story of Arthur and Sarah transcended the borders of the United States, becoming known internationally as an inspiring example of resistance and solidarity. Books, documentaries, and films have been produced about their lives, carrying their message of hope and justice to a global audience. They became icons of the struggle for human rights, figures revered by activists and defenders of equality around the world. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that the struggle for freedom is universal and that international solidarity is essential for building a more just and peaceful world. The narrative of Arthur and Sarah challenges us to look at the past with honesty and courage, to recognize the injustices and atrocities committed in the name of profit and power. But it also invites us to celebrate the resistance, resilience, and transformative capacity of the human spirit. They show us that even in the most adverse circumstances, it is possible to find the strength to fight for an ideal and build a better future. Their story is a testament to the belief that justice and freedom are non-negotiable values for which it is worth fighting and, if necessary, dying. The life of Arthur and Sarah at Oakwood was an extraordinary journey of self-discovery and commitment to the common good. They overcame their own prejudices and limitations to embrace a greater cause, demonstrating that true greatness lies in the capacity to love and serve others. Their legacy is a call to action, a call for each of us to take responsibility for building a more just, solidary, and egalitarian world. And as long as their story continues to be told, the flame of hope will never be extinguished. The story of the millionaire planter who bought the most rebellious slave and was not prepared for it is ultimately a story about the transformative power of love. It was love that allowed Arthur to see Sarah's humanity and gave him the courage to challenge the conventions of his time, and it was love that allowed Sarah to forgive Arthur and build a new life by his side. Their love was not just a romantic feeling, but a political and social force, capable of dismantling structures of oppression and forging new relationships based on equality and mutual respect. Love, as they demonstrated, is the most powerful weapon in the struggle for freedom and justice. The profound transformation of Arthur did not go unnoticed by the members of his own family, many of whom lived in the north and enjoyed the benefits of his immense wealth without questioning its origin. His younger brother, William, an ambitious man attached to aristocratic traditions, traveled to Oakwood with the intention of confronting him. William saw the liberation of the workers and Arthur's relationship with Sarah not as an act of justice, but as madness that threatened the status and patrimony of the Sterling family. The confrontation between the brothers was tense and bitter, a clash of two irreconcilable worlds. Arthur stood firm, defending his convictions with a passion William had never seen in him. He explained that true nobility did not reside in titles or blood, but in the capacity to recognize and respect the dignity of all human beings. William left infuriated, swearing to disinherit Arthur and erase his name from family history. But for Arthur, his family's rejection was a small price to pay for the peace of his conscience and Sarah's love. Daily life at Oakwood acquired a new rhythm, marked by collaboration and shared purpose. Mornings began with the crowing of roosters and the bustle of workers heading to the fields, no longer under the threat of the whip, but with the motivation of those who reap the fruits of their own effort. Sarah, with her deep knowledge of the land and plants, became a natural leader, guiding agricultural work and sharing the ancestral wisdom of her people. Arthur, stripped of his former arrogance, worked alongside them, learning the secrets of crop cultivation and discovering a connection to the land he had never experienced before. Nights at the plantation were moments of celebration and learning. Under the starry sky, the community gathered in the central square to share stories, music, and food. Sarah organized reading and debate circles where ideas about freedom, equality, and social justice were discussed. These gatherings not only strengthened the bonds of solidarity among the inhabitants of the plantation, but also awakened in them a sense of agency and empowerment. They discovered that they had a voice, and that their voice mattered. that they could be protagonists of their own destiny and builders of a better future for their children. The legacy of Oakwood transcended generations, becoming a foundational myth for the civil rights movement in America. The story of Arthur and Sarah was passed down from parents to children, inspiring countless individuals to fight against injustice and defend human dignity. Their example demonstrated that social transformation is possible, even in the most adverse circumstances, when there is the will to challenge the status quo and the courage to embrace equality. And although time has erased the physical traces of the old plantation, the spirit of freedom that flourished there remains alive in the hearts of those who continue to fight for a more just and equitable world. What state or country are you watching this story from? I want to know how far the echoes of our past are reaching. What would you do if you were in Arthur's position, risking all your fortune and reputation for love and justice? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read every single one. Do you agree with Sarah's decision to forgive Arthur and build a new life by his side? Comment yes or no below and tell me why. The story of Arthur and Sarah also challenges us to reconsider the definition of heroism. They were not flawless individuals. They were human beings grappling with the prejudices and limitations of their time. Arthur had to unlearn decades of ingrained arrogance and entitlement, while Sarah had to overcome deep-seated mistrust and the trauma of enslavement. Their heroism lay not in perfection, but in their willingness to change, to grow, and to risk everything for a cause greater than themselves. They showed that true courage is often found in the quiet daily acts of defiance and in the persistent effort to build a better world, even when the odds seem insurmountable. As the years passed, Oakwood became a symbol of what America could be. It was a place where people of different races and backgrounds worked together, learned together, and lived together in harmony. The plantation's success proved that the divisions that plagued the nation were not inevitable, but constructed, and that they could be dismantled through conscious effort and genuine solidarity. The legacy of Arthur and Sarah serves as a powerful reminder that the fight for equality is not just a political struggle, but a moral imperative, a commitment to recognizing and honoring the inherent dignity of every human being. In the end, the story of the millionaire planter and the rebellious slave is a testament to the enduring power of hope. Even in the darkest moments of American history, when the institution of slavery seemed unshakable, individuals like Arthur and Sarah dared to imagine a different future. Their story is a beacon of light, guiding us toward a more just and equitable society, and reminding us that no matter how difficult the journey, the pursuit of freedom is always worth the sacrifice. Their legacy continues to inspire, a timeless reminder that love, courage, and the unwavering belief in human dignity can indeed change the world. What state or country are you watching this story from? I want to know how far the echoes of our past are reaching. What would you do if you were in Arthur's position, risking all your fortune and reputation for love and justice? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read every single one. Do you agree with Sarah's decision to forgive Arthur and build a new life by his side? Comment yes or no below and tell me why.